Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey with Darcey. Now we are up to season 3, so let's see what happens in the show and see if I have anything of interest to say.
Oh my God.
The beginning, it felt like a fairy tale. You're like a prince. But things took a turn when I saw his controlling side.
Did you have a glass of wine?
Absolutely. What's wrong with that? The control, it's too much sometimes.
As I've said before, I totally get the adjective of controlling or labeling his behavior as controlling. Absolutely, one could use that word. I wish that in common discourse, when we talk about this sort of thing, that we would also include the word insecure or attachment insecure as to why one would resort to controlling behavior. I feel like understanding that helps us to navigate it and helps us to treat people who exhibit controlling behavior rather than labeling them as controlling and just kind of leaving it at that. Because with that word, if that's all we say, then the indictment is you're choosing to be controlling and you're evil and you need to stop, rather than looking to the underlying reason why one would be controlling, which is attachment insecurity. I wish that we could use those things in tandem.
When Jesse came to visit me in America, things got even worse. We gotta get that char grill on there, honey. If you cut it on a slant, it stays juicy.
Honey.
I've worked in restaurants, so.
I am cooking a steak, and all you do is this.
The infamous cut on the bias steak scene from last season. Yes, iconic to this show, I think.
You ruin everything.
I kept giving, and I wasn't getting anything in return, but just toxic nonsense.
Going to call the police?
Police?
So go away.
No, it
And you
wasn't
come
like that.
throw Louboutins at me? Can you believe it?
And the scene last season with the Louboutins. It's funny, I when I saw the subtitles of Louboutins, I didn't know that there was such a thing called a Louboutin shoe. I thought they were misspelling Louis Vuitton because it sounded like a mispronunciation, of the Louis, a mispronunciation of the word Louis Vuitton. But I was talking about it with my wife last night, and she says, no, there are shoes called Louboutin, or anyway, maybe, I don't know the word, but anyway.
You don't love me, you never did, you liar! Get out of my life!
I just wanted probably closure, and I never really got that closure. It was always like an awkward ending. Never again do I want to go through something like that.
So, Darcey, I hope you went to therapy in the intervening months, because I suspect that unless you spend some time getting to know your traumas, your attachment insecurities, your projective identification processes, that you're likely to have a similar relationship in the future. Not maybe exactly the same, but the themes might be very similar. So I hope you went to therapy. My guess is that she didn't, and that we're going to see a very similar course of action. She's in season 3, so I suspect that she's in a new relationship now. We'll see.
Getting into a relationship with a foreign guy that I've never met again, it's kind of crazy.
I think he's a great guy, but you should always watch out, because you don't know how things would turn out.
With the Jesse situation, it wasn't a good experience.
So, great advice from the daughters. Take your time. You never know how things are going to work out, and you rushed into the last one, and it was really hard for us. So, very mature girls. And as I said before, a testament to Darcey's parenting, that the girls feel safe enough to say those things and wise enough to come up with it.
It was ridiculous.
I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay, Mama. We love you, and that's never
It
going to
will never happen again. I would never be with someone like that again.
So the older one's face looks a little skeptical of that statement, as maybe we are. Again, has she gone to therapy? I hope that she has. It would be a logical thing to do, at least to grieve what happened. Furthermore, to explore why that relationship existed in the first place. I think a lot of times what people do after breakups, like what Darcey went through, is to conclude, oh my God, that guy was trouble. That guy's controlling. He was a psychopath. I just need to not do that again. I need to value myself and not do that again. Okay, if that's your perspective, that's one way of looking at it. Instead of, well, what was it about me? What past traumas are still with me that led me to be attracted to someone like that, and also led me to perpetuate a relationship with someone like that? And what part of me and my defenses and my traumas contributed to the conflict? Now, of course, Darcey's traumas didn't cause him to be controlling, but her traumas did lead to a conflictual road. We could maybe pin more of that on Jesse's past traumas and the way he dealt with it. But at the very least, when she engages in another relationship, all those past traumas are coming with her. And unless she has an awareness of it and has some healing from it, it's likely to cause a very, very similar themed relationship. So we'll see.
The thing that worries me is like if she just steps into it too quickly. Like with Jesse, she was expecting the best, but we all saw how that worked out.
With Tom, she only really had talked to him on the phone and not in person yet, so hopefully she knows what she's doing.
If we see any red flags, like him treating you like a child, him dissing you in public in front of his friends or family, just leave, because I don't want to see you go through all that pain again.
Again, great advice. If you see any red flags, just leave, because it's not going to get any better, according to the oldest daughter there. Now, what I would say is if you see any red flags, go to couples therapy, and maybe there's a way around this. I've treated people like Jesse before and helped them to become aware of their attachment insecurities, their traumas, helped heal, so that they can have relationships where they don't engage in those kinds of reactivity, i.e. controlling. So it's totally possible for people like Jesse and Darcey to work out. It just requires a lot of work.
With Jesse, it just felt like a false love. But I feel like Tom's the right one for me.
All right, wish me luck. Here we go. Oh my God.
So there's nothing wrong with having optimism about your next dating relationship. There's nothing wrong with having hope. There's nothing wrong with building a relationship. But I think a lot of us might look at Darcey and say, this could be a bad thing for you to dive headfirst into another relationship that frankly has a lot of the same hallmarks as the previous relationship. We don't know Tom's personality, but someone who, in a long distance relationship, someone who lives in Europe, someone who likes to use a lot of selfies and a particular facial expression, and maybe it'll turn out the same. So why would people do that? Why would people have so much what we might call unwise optimism? Well, because we all desire attachment security. We all want that closeness with other people. And when we see a glimmer of that possibility, then our hopes kind of build it up. It's sort of like when I went to see the most recent Star Wars movie. I really wanted it to be a wonderful thing, and I had high hopes of it fulfilling the kind of feeling I had when I saw Empire Strikes Back at the age of 9. And I wanted that feeling again, and the buzz was in the air that maybe I'd get it. And so when I went into that movie, I had this huge expectations and hope of having that original feeling, and my feelings were dashed. So sometimes we have to slow down and say, okay, there's nothing wrong with hope, but I need to stay realistic here because I don't really have enough data to draw any conclusions yet. So I'm open. I hope for the best, but let's expect some roadblocks here, or some bumps. Maybe when I meet him in person, we'll have no chemistry and I won't even like him. Let's just wait and see. But again, love is love, and so let's see what happens.
You ready to see the lip doctor? I'm excited.
Today I'm with my twin sister Stacy for some Cosmetic Procedures. I don't want to look run down and tired. When Tom sees me for the first time, I want it to be unforgettable.
Hello, lady.
So I think I said this last season, there's nothing wrong with wanting to look your best and to take pleasure in looking good. However, I wish people like this would spend an equal, if not more amount of time trying to heal from their past attachment disruptions and injuries. Going to the lip doctor is perfectly fine. It's not my lifestyle, but it certainly is. People can live the life that they want to live. And I wish that people were as ready to go to therapy as they were to do things like this. So.
How are you? Good. Tom's a little bit of a party boy. He's been around a lot of beautiful women. So, I do feel pressure to measure up.
Maybe you're getting tired of me saying, go to therapy, go to therapy, go to therapy. I mean, as a therapist, I guess it's self-serving. I will say that my practice has been full for a long time. And I probably should say this because some of you are actually reaching out to me for therapy. So you can certainly email me for consultation. I sometimes will talk with people on the phone as a hired educational consultant about certain things. If you have like a question, you want to learn about differentiation, you want to learn about borderline personality, sometimes people will hire me on that level. Clinicians out there around the world will sometimes hire me as a consultant or supervisor for their practices. I'm not selling my practice right now. My point is that I realize it might be a little redundant saying go to therapy, but it really bears repeating. There's so much stigma in the world around going to therapy, particularly in some areas, that prevents people from going, which prevents people from becoming therapists because there isn't enough money in it. There's not enough jobs in it. Some communities, some of you will email me and say, we don't have any therapists in our town at all. Because in my country, in our region, it's not considered something that is normal to do, or only for people who suffer from schizophrenia or that kind of thing. And so I want to use this platform to try to make a positive difference, and that's one of the things that I want to do is spread that word and destigmatize. I go to therapy. I've gone to therapy since I was 19 years old and really benefited from it. So everyone should be in therapy periodically because everyone has attachment injuries. And a lot of you are reaching out to me asking me questions of like, how do I deal with this? And, I hate to say this over email of like, I value what you're going through and I can't really help you. It's too complicated what you're asking me. So the best thing I can tell you is go to therapy. Now, I also understand that in a lot of communities, even in the United States, there's not enough money to pay for this sort of thing. A lot of people, their insurance doesn't cover it, or they don't have insurance, or the therapists in their area don't really do the kinds of therapy that really help with the sort of things that I'm talking about. And sometimes it just takes a long time to find the right one. There's a lot of online platforms right now to connect you with therapists outside of your town. So things are opening up, and if you're a legislature out there, I know we have some governmental people who watch the podcast, do what you can to pass laws so that it can propagate mental health access to people. That is one of the most fundamental problems moving into the 21st century is access to mental health services. And I'm not talking about just depression treatment. I'm talking about attachment-based therapy. I'm talking about psychodynamic therapy, humanistic therapy, things that really enhance people's lives. And it's not just the icing on the cake. If Darcey was to heal from her attachment traumas, she would be able to better have a relationship that would last. Her kids would benefit from her attachment security. Her kids are not going to benefit if the mom is distracted and upset and introducing these chaotic elements into the children's lives. So, and when you raise kids under such chaos, there's greater rates of dropout from school, mental illness, crime, school dropout, drug addiction, these kinds of things that we could tie an economic value to. I don't think everything should be tied to economics. We should just be thinking about the well-being of humans. But if you need an economic value, there have been studies tying all this to economic value. So, let's spread the word. Also, while I'm on the topic, I can't diagnose from afar. As I always try to say, I try to write these things down. So as I talk about this, understand that everything I say about these individuals is purely based on what the producers are showing to us, which is not the real people. Also know that this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. Become a patron on patreon.com. Subscribe on YouTube and hit the bell. And also comment below. Participate in the conversation, please, because we always like to hear what people are having to say. All right, let's move on.
Stacy's been engaged for 3 years to a guy named Florian, who's 27, and lives in Albania. Stacy and I always tend to go for the foreign guys. They also met online on Instagram.
So some of you might be having a question that would be like, what is it about these two women that makes them attracted to quote-unquote foreigners? I don't know why I said quote-unquote foreigners, but non-Americans, people who live abroad. And it's a good question that you might be having if you have that question. There's no answer to that is very satisfactory to me based on what we have available to us in terms of the data. Yeah, I mean, just speculation. European, they're not attracted to people from Taiwan, for example, or they haven't exhibited that. Their track record is Europe, and maybe they have certain associations with Europe that is appealing to them. Maybe people from these other areas have the sort of personalities of men that they're looking for. Holland, London, Albania. I don't know what the common denominator there is in comparison to Connecticut. But I'm sure you could speculate below in the comments, for example. I know some people like to comment about that. We could also say maybe that because these women are into fashion, maybe American men aren't typically into fashion as much as people in Europe are. I could certainly attest to that as someone from Seattle, perhaps one of the most casual places on the planet. Most people in the United States are, on average, less into fashion. Going to Tokyo, Japan, you never realize how much of a schlub you are until you go to places like that. You're just like, man, everyone's dressed really well, and look at me. And I'm actually considered a metrosexual in Seattle, which is funny because on the scale of things, it's I'm a schlub like anyone else. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a lifestyle. At least that's what I tell myself. So maybe those are speculations. Now, personality-wise, as a speculation, you could say that these two women probably had relational traumas, significant ones growing up, maybe with men in particular. I have no data on that, so I have no idea. That led them to have a complex around closeness and an anxiety around getting close to people, an anxiety of being lovable. That would lend itself to this sort of behavior, meaning that we could, possibly see a road where, because they were maybe abandoned or mistreated growing up by their father, again, no idea, or men in their lives, that they're not quite trusting of men. They want to have a spouse, they want a companion, but they worry perhaps more than average about whether or not they're actually going to get consistent love from other people. And to date someone in your area would mean that the road to finding out about disappointment would be much faster, right? If you met someone who lived across town, you could quickly find out within a couple weeks that that person is indeed going to abandon you the way that people had in the past. At least that's the prediction, right? This is all subconscious. Whereas if you date someone from out of the country, there's this innate barrier to actually meeting up, which means that the dating time span is greatly expanded by the fact that either one of you could be dating other people, and it's easier in some ways to express a lot of love and to be the right kind of partner when it's just over WhatsApp and texting and phone. It's when you actually are in the same town that things start to rapidly speed up and your opportunities for disappointing each other go up, as was seen with Darcey and Jesse. So it's possible that they are reaching out to these foreign men because of that reason, that it allows them a greater period of, shall we say, the honeymoon period of fantasy where, oh my God, this is perfect. He hasn't disappointed me yet. Everything's going well. This is going to be the best, and it elongates that period of time. And then when you actually meet them, it quickly falls apart because of both people are coming to the table with unawareness about their attachment injuries, and they proceed to trigger each other. Total speculation there as well. Sometimes people will say that this is evidence of people being attracted to unavailable men or unavailable partners, but I would describe it in that more longer way. So total speculation, no idea. Let's see what else happens here.
I feel like Tom, he is definitely a Prince Charming, definitely has that vibe that I like, checks off all the boxes. So I know she wants to be swept off her feet, find her Prince Charming. You always go in with an open heart.
Absolutely.
So, I'm 44, Stacy. I don't want to be alone. I want to find, my dream man. And I feel like Tom has a lot of those qualities I'm looking for and the perfect guy for me.
So this is a small comment. Maybe this is because I'm 49. I hear a lot of people having this kind of vibe when they're dating as in their 40s or 50s. They'll say like, I'm 44. I don't have all the time in the world, and it'll add this level of desperation or this level of trying to move really fast. What I want to say to people when they say that is, you likely have a long time to live, and you have a long time to find the right person. Now, I know for some people, if you're like 35 and you want to have kids and you haven't had kids yet and you're a woman, then that does put this other issue at play, which is a reality. But I always kind of worry when people say phrases like that. Well, I'm 44 and I don't have all the time in the world. And I worry that it adds this additional blind spot to evaluating whether or not a relationship is compatible or good for you. It adds this like, well, I got to make this one work. I just wish people would live in the moment and try to expand. That's another point, actually, I should bring up that I guess isn't super relevant to this, but I guess it kind of applies to Darcey, which is that a lot of people will come to me talking about how they're dating, and they'll sit down on my couch and they'll talk about what's happening, and they're in the future. Okay, I want to have kids. I want to get married. I want to grow old with someone, and it's not a happy thought. They're uncertain as to whether or not they're going to get to that place. And they want that vision in their mind of growing old together with someone, having kids, having a family, having the white picket fence, all that kind of stuff. And that plagues them in the moment because they don't have that. Like Yoda said, I can't remember the exact phrase he says to Luke in Empire Strikes Back is, never right here in the moment, never, comment below about the exact Yoda as he pokes his cane in Luke's chest. And there's a lot of wisdom to that. Back then, George Lucas actually could write a script. And to live in the moment, you are, Darcey, about to embark on a dating relationship that the future is completely unknown. Enjoy it. Have that experience. Revel in the dating uncertainty. If you do end up with Tom, 10 years later, you're going to look back at this time with some positive valence. And you're going to be like, oh, remember back then when it was all young and it was new love? And there's a lot of people who tend to look at they're always trying to get somewhere rather than stopping, smelling the roses, appreciating what they have, and really expanding on the wonderfulness of the position that you're in. If you're out there and you're dating and you're like, oh, I need to scrape and scrap to get to this future situation that will be perfect. Well, the chance of that future situation being perfect is basically zilch. There's no chance it's going to be perfect. It'll have a whole other set of problems. There's nothing wrong with trying to have secure attachments in your life, believe me. But there is something disappointing, I think, and a missed opportunity to say, hey, I'm dating right now, and there's pros and cons to that. And the pro is blah, 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 and the cons are this. And so I'm really going to live in that space. I don't know if Darcey's going through that, but that's just what came to mind. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining me out there. Please take care of yourself because you deserve it, and tune in next time when we continue to follow Darcey's story.